And then moving on, we have next presentation from your conference organizer, Aaron Wissner. One of the benefits of being a conference organizer is you can write yourself into the agenda wherever you want and as many times as you want. As I'm sure many of you know, earlier this year, Aaron was featured on the front page of the Wall Street Journal for his role in the peak oil education campaign. He, of course, founded the nonprofit educational organization Local Future, which is holding this, the first ever international conference on peak oil and climate change, Paths to Sustainability. He writes, speaks, and produces videos on peak oil and climate change. Aaron's extensive online journal, Value System, Gas Prices, Peak Oil, Money, and the Future, consists of over 100 essays by Wissner as he has documented his attempt to understand the world. He's also a public school teacher of 16 years, a former president of his local, county, and regional educational associations, and an incredible organizer and educator on this topic who has done a lot, not only for Michigan area, but for the country. So please welcome Aaron Wissner.
Welcome. So I was going to tell you a little story because people have asked me, how is it that you came to organize this conference, and how did we get here, and where did you come from, and what's going on here? And so I'd just like to say a few words about that. And I'd like to share something that I think is, I've never read anything about. And so I wanted to share it with you because I think it's important, but I'm not entirely sure. And so I'll offer it to you as something to think about. And it's called The Mechanism of Mischief. But before we go to that, 3 events in my life helped to get us to this point. The first event was, I was very concerned about what was happening in the third world. This was about 6 years ago. And I was trying to figure out, how can we help people in the third world? People that don't have enough food, or don't have homes, or they don't have fresh water, or they don't have good health care, good education. How can we do that? And during the summertime as a teacher, I had a lot of time off. And before having baby Michael this past summer, I had lots of time off in the summer. I don't suspect I'll have that so much anymore. So I went to the library and I looked up this topic, and I came across an essay about how we should maybe donate a certain portion of our money to charity so that we could help the people in Africa. And the argument was, think about $1,000 or $100 or whatever. You know, you could take that $100 and you could spend it on something fun like going to a concert. But what if you had that same $100 and there was an automobile accident which was about to happen, and just by giving that $100 up, that accident wouldn't happen and someone's life would be saved? Would you do it? Yeah. Okay, so imagine it's a child, and you can't get there, but the guy right there, he's not doing it, but you say, I'll give you $100, get the girl, and she gets it. And the essay basically went on. It was written by Peter Singer, the ethicist from Australia. And it went on to basically say that we should be given more money to people in the other part of the world. From there, I checked out the only book my library in Bear Lake had by Peter Singer. It was called Animal Liberation. And I thought, I'm not sure why he's talking about Africans as animals, but I guess I'll read the book anyway. And so I skipped the preface and all that stuff, and I started reading, and it was talking about ethics, and then it started talking about how animals are treated. And I was reading through it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know this. I didn't know about CAFOs and chicken barns and all those different things. And so by the time I got done reading the book, I said, okay, I'll just eat vegetables and fruits and vegetables. I won't eat meat anymore. And I became vegan that day. It didn't make my family very happy. I can't say that it made my wife very happy because she had been working on a new diet for us, and that included lots of meat. But I think the thing that I came away with from that, beyond becoming vegan and aware of animal issues, was that there are things that I had never been taught anywhere that were going on that I wanted to know about, but no one was telling me. So skip ahead a couple of years. I'm in the car. I'm heading north, gonna go skiing up at Nub's Knob or Bittersweet or Crystal Mountain. Crystal Mountain, I think we were going. Crystal Mountain, by the way, is one of the sponsors of this event. So we were on our way, and I was the passenger in the vehicle. We'd left early on a Saturday. It was March the 5th. And so the driver was an Australian from Sydney. And in Sydney, they don't really have snow. And we're driving up the freeway, and we're getting near big rapids. And you know when you're on the freeway and you see you're going over another road, and it says bridge ices before road. That's kind of a short sign, but I learned what that means. Because my friend Chris, he was driving, highway speed, 70, 75 miles an hour. And when he hit that ice, he tried to correct this way. He tried to correct that way. He tried to correct this way. And I could tell, oh boy. He tried to correct this way one more time. And I knew I was 100% certain. Absolutely. This is the end. I was absolutely sure. There's no doubt in my mind. I was done. And, in that moment I thought to myself, what have you done that's memorable? I mean, you have these visions of being remembered for something. I mean, that's your big goal in life, to be remembered, right, Aaron? Yeah, that's really what you'd like to be. I was like, oh, man, I've wasted 34 years and I haven't written anything, I haven't done anything, and what am I waiting for? And after I lived, and so did all the other people in the car, which was quite amazing to me after rolling over as many times as we did, going down into the ditch and everybody getting smashed on the head by the flying glass and cuts and bruises and all that. That gave me a little new perspective on, I don't want to take 40 years to do something. I don't even want to take 20 or 10 years to do something. I want to start working on stuff now. So then, the third event was the gasoline price story, which I told you last night. Just thinking about gasoline prices right before Katrina, the prices have been going up. I found out about peak oil on the internet. I went to the website lifeaftertheoilcrash.net, written by Matthew Savinar, a younger man who recently graduated with a law degree, found out about peak oil, and then wrote a whole website about what might happen. And after reading that, I found Pat and Faith and Megan's conference, went to their conference, learned more about it, went to the ASPO conference, learned more about it, and I started thinking about how do we educate people. So that's kind of the backstory. For a long time, I've been looking at the world and I've been thinking about how did we get here? And this really where we wanted to go. Like, did my grandparents, when they thought of the year 2008, did they think it would look like this when they were little kids? Did my great-great-grandparents, when they were living in Bear Lake and Manistee, were they thinking that the world would look like this? Were they thinking that the forests would all be gone? Were they thinking that the fishes and the seas would be depleted? Were they wondering that the carbon dioxide would be changing our atmosphere? And that got me thinking about what is the mechanism by which we have got here? And why is it then when we have great social movements, like, for example, the animal rights movement, which I think is a wonderfully compassionate movement, and I've went to the conferences and I've talked to the people who are part of that movement, and they just care so much about the animals because they believe the animals, and I believe the animals, are as important as we are. I mean, they all have a right to live. But why hasn't the animal rights movement, as an example of a movement, why hasn't it spread? Why has it been 30 years and still it's maybe 1 or 2% of the US population? For the environmental movement, we've been working on this environmental movement for a long time, but why is it only a few percentage points of the population that's really involved? You know, some of the social justice movements, why is it that, for example, the gay rights movement, why has it taken so long to get there? I mean, and now we still have almost every state you can't even get married if you love someone that happens to be the same gender as you. And so I was wondering, why is it taking so long? And I was wondering about this mechanism. So then, after going to the animal rights conference and becoming vegan, I decided to think about how could I be the best vegan I could possibly be? And I thought, okay, well, if I have money, if I have a $5 bill, for example, I'm going to go and buy something good. So I'm going to go buy some food-grown produce at the local farm market. That's good, right? Right? Is that good? Okay, yeah, see? All right, so I take the money and I give it to the person who is the local farmer growing the farm market. Oh, they're very happy to receive the money. Now they got the money, and they have to do something with the money. They have to go maybe to the gas station, and they have to pay for the gasoline. So the gasoline attendant gets the money, goes in the register. They get paid later on. Now they've got the money. And of course they have to feed their family, so they take that money and they go to the grocery store and they buy some hamburger. Right? Well, I mean, they're probably not vegetarian because most of the US is not vegetarian. So I started thinking about what's going on here. I try to do something that's good. You know, I buy local food that's vegetarian food, it's vegetables, not harming any animals. It goes to buy gasoline, which is unsustainable. It goes to buy meat, which was probably raised in an unethical manner and bad for the environment. What's the mechanism by which this mischief in the world is going on? And the more I think about it, the more I think about this money, I don't know where this particular bill came from. It's in my wallet now, or it's in my hand now. Who had it before me? How did they get it? Who am I actually going to give this to next? What are they going to do with it? 2 transactions from me, is it going to get to somebody who's going to buy a pack of cigarettes, for example? Well, it's their choice, you could say, but it's not something I would do. I wouldn't give anyone $5 to just go buy cigarettes, even if they would, said, I'll trade you some vegetables for some cigarettes or whatever, But think in your own mind. Think of the example of something that you really think is wrong, illegal, but has happened. Okay? For example, the rainforests. Destruction of the rainforests. That's That's bad, right? We need the trees to absorb the carbon dioxide. We need the trees to help transpire the moisture. Does this have anything to do with that? Well, there was a woman who was very concerned about the rainforests. And she went down to Brazil, to the Amazon, to work with the people who were living in the rainforests to live in a sustainable way so that the trees wouldn't be cut down. And she was very active. And there were people who did not like her because she was working with the people. And she had lived there for 20 years. She was from Ohio. And she was loved so much in the area that at one point in time, a book was written about her, about how wonderful she was, helping the people in the rainforest to live sustainably in the land. But then something happened. The nun who died for the Amazon. I'll read this along with you. The case of murdered nun and activist Dorothy Stang has brought into sharp focus the vigilante violence that accompanies the destruction of Brazil's rainforest. On first appearance, Dorothy Stang, who was 71 when I met her, looked very much the little old lady as she welcomed us into her small house. She had snow white hair, large glasses, red cheeks, and a large smile. But there was also a glint in her eye, which suggested convictions and commitment, great strength. As soon as I sat down, she looked straight at me and asked in her quiet voice, "So, whose side are you on?" Sister Dorothy had no doubt about her place in the battle lines drawn over the future of the Amazon. She was, she said, for the interests of the huge majority of poor Brazilians who live there. Sometimes, almost in a whisper, she talked passionately about 30 years she had spent trying to improve the lives of penniless settlers moving into the Amazon, teaching them to live with the forest rather than destroy it. She described the logging companies coming to the remote town of Anapu, where she lived, cutting down the forest illegally. And she talked about corruption. This was the story I was investigating. The story goes on to explain what happened. What happened was Dorothy was found on a trail between two of the villages. It was a very sad time. She was much loved. When the police investigated, they determined that there were two culprits, these two gentlemen. And these two gentlemen had shot her in self-defense, because when she reached for her Bible, of course, she was reaching for a gun. And so the 7 bullets they put into her had something to do with the fact that she was reaching for a gun. It later turned out that these men had been encouraged to kill Dorothy Stang by a bribe of, or an offer of, $10,000 if she was killed. So why would anyone offer $10,000? Because I can imagine if my son Michael desperately needed a life-saving procedure, and if the only way I could get the money for that procedure, if that was the only way, I mean, I would consider it. I don't like to admit it, but I would consider it for my son. I don't know what their motivation was. I don't know how much they needed the money. But where did that money come from? Well, the money was offered up by this man and some other men. This man was a rancher, and I say that loosely. He was a man who had moved out into the Amazon along that trans-Amazon highway that was built right through the Amazon rainforest. And he wanted to cut down the trees. But Dorothy Strang wanted the trees to remain. And why did he want to cut down the trees? Can we bring the lights down so we can see this a bit? Yeah, bring them way down. So this is Google Earth. There's the Amazon emptying into the Atlantic Ocean. Here's this town where Dorothy Strang was trying to help. And you probably can't see it yet. But if you notice, this is the highway that was built through the Amazon. And it has a very weird shape. And as you zoom in on it, you see that the highway has these lines coming off of it.